So I joined the Air Force when I was 18, basically to get away from home. I joined up working in logistics. My first tour of duty was in the Falkland Islands, which is where I met my first wife. It was a very sort of difficult relationship, but we decided to get married anyway to see if we can make it work in the long run. But unfortunately it didn't. During that relationship we spent 2 years in Cyprus and then came back to the UK, at which point I had left the Air Force and tried to make ends meet working in Civvy Street, but that didn't work either, so I rejoined the Air Force. It was just really tough, it really was. I just sank lower and lower. I managed to get through basic training mainly because I had that experience and had done it before and I knew what to expect. All the while our relationship was going from bad to worse. And it got to a sort of pinch point. And at this point my grandparents suggested I go and stay with them for a weekend, which I did. And I ended up going to a men's breakfast with my granddad, where I was kind of stared at by a guy who chest poked me after 2 hours of listening to something in a men's breakfast and asked me if I was in the kingdom, and I just didn't know. So he said, you know, try Jesus. So that sowed a seed. And so the next 2 decisions I made were sort of bittersweet. I separated from my ex-wife, and then about a month later I committed my life to Christ. When I first became a Christian, I used to swear a lot before that. So the big challenge for me was to try and stop swearing, which does work most of the time, but as we all know, when we get frustrated or we don't think about what we're going to say before we say it, it kind of just pops out. I used to kind of poke my nose in other people's business and be a bit of a gossip, so trying to stay away from that, for me personally, can be a challenge, and that's a daily thing, you know. So I started going to church in Wolverhampton called Lifespring, which is where I met my now wife, Gemma. Being at that church and meeting Gemma were amazing. You know, she accepted me for who I am, and it wasn't long before we were engaged and we got married, and then I moved back to Bryce Norton to work on the Hercules here. And yeah, I've been going strong for God ever since.